Good afternoon and welcome to our April ChemCareers webinar, which is on careers in environmental materials. My name is Laura Woodward and I am one of the Career and Professional Development Advisors here at the Royal Society of Chemistry, and I'll be chairing the session this afternoon. We're joined today by a panel of 3 members who are going to share their career stories and experiences and highlight the opportunities within environmental materials. I hope listening to them will hopefully demonstrate the breadth and variety available in this area. And I absolutely know that listening to them all speak will be inspiring, as I know they're all really passionate about what they do. I'll quickly ask each of them to introduce themselves. So perhaps, Leslie, if I can start with you.
Thank you, Laura, and welcome to everybody. This is my first webinar to so many people, so hopefully it'll be very smooth. I know Laura and the Society have put a lot of effort into organising it. I'm an environmental chemist. I've worked in waste management for more than 30 years. I graduated in environmental chemistry. I started my career doing research at the Atomic Energy Authority in Harwell in Oxfordshire into the fundamental behaviour of wastes. And since about 1986, I've been working, providing advice on environmental issues with a company called MJCA, where I'm now the Managing Director and Principal Environmental Chemist, and that's a consultancy. And most of my input in that consultancy role is looking at the assessment and control of chemical contaminants in the water, air and soil environments.
Brilliant, thank you. And David, perhaps to you next, just to kind of say hello and give us a brief overview of what you do.
Sure. Hi everyone. My name's Dr. David Medison. I'm Senior Lecturer in Chemistry and Environmental Forensics at Manchester Met University. So yeah, a lot of my research is environmental forensics based work. So I'm an environmental chemist that kind of tracks pollution in the environment. I also work as a consultant as well, so work on a few litigation cases as well as doing research. Thank you.
And Celine.
Hi everybody, my name's Celine. I work as a commercial testing coordinator at Polymateria. Polymateria is an environmental company which develops an additive that goes into conventional plastics during their production and subsequently causes them to biodegrade if they ever end up being littered in the natural environment. My role as a coordinator is to oversee and manage our client projects and conduct testings using independent laboratory. So I currently manage 2 laboratories, one in Scotland and another in India. And I'm also actively involved in a lot of our R&D projects, which I support the team when it comes to project management and achieving our deadlines.
Brilliant, thank you. So as I said, we're going to hear from each of our panel members, really kind of sharing their career stories, their roots into the work that they do, and just understand what they enjoy about their work and perhaps some of the challenges that they face. Please do ask questions. So actually, as we're going through, if sort of questions are springing to mind, do type those into the questions box, and I will try and get through as many of those as we can at the end of the session this afternoon. So yeah, do type those in as they come to mind. So just to start with, I'm going to be asking each of our panel members just to kind of tell us a bit more about what they do. So perhaps starting with you, David, can you tell me more about your route into your current work? And I know you've sent me some slides, so I'm just going to put those up and share those. So over to you, David. I think you're on mute, David. I can't hear you.
Thank you. That's 1-0 to me on the mute bingo.
That's fine. It's easily done. It's the phrase of 2020, isn't it? You're on mute. So
I know. The radio just goes in my head whenever I hear. yeah, sorry about that, everyone. My name's Dr. Dave Megson, as you've met, and yeah, I've prepared a couple of slides to kind of go through my career route a little bit. So if you're all right, kind of clicking to the next slide for me, please. So yeah, this kind of goes through my history. For my A levels, I probably didn't set the world on fire too much. I got kind of C's and B's. And then I discovered environmental forensics. I wanted to be a volcanologist to start off with, and then I attended an open day at Bangor and spoke to somebody that told me all about these environmental investigations where he was measuring oil and prosecuting companies, and it kind of tied up my passions really of chemistry and wanting to be outside. After that, I kind of found out I wanted to learn more about chemistry, so did a very chemistry heavy master's. I then worked as an environmental consultant back close to my kind of home area in the northwest for a few years, where I was monitoring environmental pollutants, remediating sites, doing waste assessments. And after kind of a few years of that, I decided rather than kind of following everybody else's guidance, I wanted to kind of go into the research a bit more and try and inform the guidance and head towards that. So I did a PhD in Plymouth, which was looking at human exposure to pollutants and trying to find ways to identify how people might have been exposed to pollutants. After that, I was fortunate enough to get a postdoc position in a laboratory in Toronto in Canada. So this was kind of fantastic 2 years working as a researcher, trying to find new contaminants in the environment before they became a real problem. And then in 2016, I moved back to the UK, where I was able to get a job as a lecturer to kind of carry on my research and work as an environmental chemist. Can you go to the next slide, please? Thanks. So who I work for Manchester Met, where I teach and undertake research. I also work as a consultant for Chemistry Matters, where we work on a variety of different litigation cases. And again, I get to undertake research. Some of the logos on the slides are kind of also people that I work for as well. So as well as Chemistry Matters and Manchester Met, I also work for the Committee for the International Network of Environmental Forensics. I help ISO and BSI develop standards. I'm chair for the British Mass Spec Society Environment and Food Analysis Group. So there's quite a few various different roles I've been involved with, also with the Royal Society of Chemistry as well, sitting on some of their committees. Have you got next? Thank you. So the research that my group does, we're fortunate enough that we had kind of a Hollywood movie on my subject, which kind of came out 2 years ago. And I don't know how many people saw the Dark Waters film, but I thought I was absolutely fantastic at describing the type of research that I do. So we go out, we take samples. They can be very glamorous samples. So I've got a PhD student at the moment who's taking samples from sharks in kind of South America. My research was more on biosolids, which is a trendy word for sewage sludge. So when I did my research, we did quite a lot in that. We then extract and prepare some of these samples, kind of purify the pollutants, analyze them using kind of funky new analytical equipment, and then try and statistically interpret this data to try and find out where the pollution comes from. And then importantly as well, we need to try and publish that research. So I'm not just sharing it with myself, but hopefully other academics and the rest of the world as well, really. Have you got the next slide, please? Thanks. So some of the recent work we've done, we've been looking at background levels of pollutants in e-waste sites. We've been looking at characterizing pollutants on aircraft, where several people have kind of sadly died, and many more have lost their job due to aerotoxic syndrome. We've been looking at human exposure to people in various industries, such as transformer dismantling plants, and also monitoring pollutants in the environment as well. As well as writing scientific papers, I think it's good to try and expand the research out to other avenues as well. So we've done some work for National Geographic. I was also fortunate enough to appear on BBC Radio 4, which was an incredibly nerve-wracking experience, where I was kind of chatting with, it seems like I was chatting with Mark Ruffalo. I was by myself, and kind of, so I'm still a little bit bitter that I didn't get to meet him, as you might be able to tell from the photo there. If you got the next slide, please. So I guess in my different roles, being a senior lecturer, I get to teach on a variety of different things. I'm fortunate enough to supervise quite a few different PhD students, which I absolutely love. I get to disseminate my research through publications, try and apply for grants. These can range from, I think the smallest grant I've won was £1,000, and the largest grant which I failed to get was 2 million. And I get to travel the globe kind of talking about research, which was like my dream as a child. So that was fantastic. Downsides, I have a lot more admin than I like. I average an email every 7 minutes, but to be honest, I don't care. That's a small price to pay for all the, in my opinion, brilliant stuff I get to do. Have you got the next one? So associate director, I'm associate director of one of our research centres. This is more kind of admin supporting. I quite like it because I get to push equality and diversity issues, and I think things that are important to me. And being the associate's great because I can grumble and play devil's advocate, but I don't have to take over all responsibility. So I really like that role as well. Being an environmental consultant, this is really exciting with just kind of looking at some of the scale of the work we do sometimes. And although that kind of looks like quite, I guess, kind of a really exciting thing, it's probably some of the dullest work we do sometimes, because a lot of it's desk-based and trawling through, gathering evidence, preparing and writing reports. The thing I like about being an environmental consultant is, although the client pays me, my duties to the court. So my job is to report the truth, supply the facts, and then it's kind of the lawyers that add the spin. And so I kind of feel like my conscience is quite clean with that, as I'm just reporting facts. So I guess finally, to kind of go through how I got all of these opportunities, my first job took me 57 individually written emails to different companies. I got one reply, and that was because in my interests, I mentioned I was with Scouts. You might think that's quite fortunate, but I like to think I created that opportunity by just email blasting so many people. With my PhD, I did similar. I went round and individually wrote to, again, about 50 different universities to see if they had opportunities. For my postdoc, I ended up chatting to a guy in a pub at 1 AM, and he offered me the chance to come and work with him. For my lectureship, again, I came second twice in job interviews, but I offered to do a guest lecture kind of for free, and that got me in through the side door. For my associate director position, I took a punt on the application. I honestly didn't think I'd get it. I just wanted the director to see my CV and know a little bit about me. And that's a good thing with an interview. Somebody's got to listen to you for an hour or so. So it's a good way to kind of put yourself forward, even if you don't get the job, especially internally. And then consultancy as well. I wasn't having a beer that time, I was on antibiotics. But again, chatting to people. So a lot of my opportunities, I think I've been fortunate, but I've created them. And yeah, they've kind of come through my persistence rather than me scoring X% on an exam. So I think there's much more to life than that. So thanks for that. Hopefully I've not blabbed on too much.
No, that's really, I think that's really useful. Thank you for sharing that, David. And I think actually what you've really highlighted there around your, you know, the opportunities is actually that really important, how important networking is, and like you say, there's a bit of luck involved, but actually it's about creating those opportunities as well. So I think that's really fantastic to sort of highlight those things. Leslie, over to you next. Can you tell us more about your current work and what drew you to working in this particular field?
Thanks, Laura. Yes, the subject I studied, as mentioned earlier, was environmental chemistry, and I studied at Edinburgh University, which was a wonderful place to be in the days when environmental courses were few and far between. And for me, it was a weird choice because when I was at school, I was lucky enough to really enjoy science. I also enjoyed maths and languages, and so it was quite hard for me to know what I really wanted to do and how to choose what path to follow. I was rubbish at art, so I knew I wasn't going to do anything in that sector. But by the time I went to the University Open Day, in my head, I was either going to do accountancy or chemistry. So it was a bit of a weird split of subjects. But anyway, I chose environmental chemistry. I was impressed with the course and the people and the city and all of those things. And I don't regret that decision ever. It was a fabulous choice. And for me, it was an ideal combination of a standard 3-year chemistry degree with a final 4th year focused on environmental chemistry. They're 4-year courses, honours degree courses in Scottish universities. And I'd no idea at the time what I wanted to do as a career. I didn't even know what opportunities were out there, to be honest. But I did know that I didn't really want to work in a laboratory, and I wanted to do something that was applied rather than academic research. They were the sort of vague ideas I had in my mind. But I wasn't really focused on any particular career output. And so as I got to the end of my degree, I was very lucky to be encouraged by someone who had completed the course the previous year, and their employers had sent them back up to Edinburgh to persuade others on the course to apply. They felt the course suited the occupation very well. And that was the Atomic Energy Authority at Harwell Laboratories near Oxford, which is where I had my first job. And AA were funded at the time by the Department of the Environment, so government funding, to carry out some of the world's first scientific investigations together with the Water Research Centre and the British Geological Survey into how wastes behave in the environment and how they should be managed. So it was a fantastic opportunity to be very much at the forefront of this work and beginning of understanding in a scientific way of how these types of materials behave. And the science had been applied initially in the 60s and 70s to the problem of managing radioactive wastes. And the knowledge that was acquired through that research was then beginning to be applied to normal municipal and industrial waste, if you like. So it was a fabulous introduction to what I still find as an endlessly fascinating subject, which I had no clue existed until I heard about the job. And I think that's still the case for most people today, that the waste management industry and managing wastes, managing environmental aspects of activities like waste management and minerals and contaminated land is not something very many people are aware of or consider as a career opportunity. But I learned so much about all of those things in a very short time, and interestingly experienced firsthand how the outputs from applied science are used by government to develop regulations and guidance. So the link between the two was something I came across very early on in my career. And my job ever since, which has been in consultancy with MJCA since 1986, has continued really to inhabit that area between science and regulation. And mostly it's been applied on the management of waste. That's sort of the majority of the work I get involved in, but also related to other industries such as mineral extraction, the management of contaminated land, and so on. If you've got the slide there, Laura, of the waste industry, it's just something that gives you an example of the breadth of the different activities that are covered by the waste management industry and how complex the waste management field can be. Often all anybody knows about waste management is what they try and learn about what they can put in this bin or that bin, and where very few people then actually know what happens to it once it's collected and taken away. But when you begin to consider the detail, you can see that there are so many aspects which have the potential for environmental impact, and that every aspect of that is where the knowledge of behaviour of contaminants in the environment needs to be applied to make sure that the environment is properly protected, and that the best use is made of all the things that society throws away but still needs to be managed. So whether a material is being disposed of, whether it's being recovered to be reused, whether it's going through a process that then will commonly identify and separate out some things that can be reused, others that can't, all of those parts of the activities have the potential to have an environmental impact, and whether that's in the soil or in the air or discharges to water, the key thing is to understand where they go, where the contaminants are likely to end up, what effect they can have, and properly then how you control them, how you monitor that they are being properly controlled. So that's really where my waste management industry expertise is in managing, understanding the fate and transport of contaminants and advising people on how best they can be managed. And the waste sector itself is huge, and it's a massively rewarding place to work. And each year, for example, the companies that make up the sector manage a total of 27.4 million tonnes of household waste, nearly 28 million tonnes of commercial and industrial waste, so that's manufacturing and commercial waste from businesses and so on, and then an additional 55 million tonnes of construction and demolition waste. So it's a massive amount of material that gets moved through day after day after day after day. And COVID has interestingly thrown up some very unusual waste streams that have also added to that complexity and interest. And innovation also is a constant feature of the industry, and particularly currently when people are understanding better the need to reuse things, to create new things from old things, and to treat waste more as a resource, then there's a whole other area of innovation and so on. So fascinating area, which I won't go on about more, but happy to answer questions on. But also just to mention very briefly, I'm a manager and director also of a consultancy. So there is a role as a manager, a role as someone who's leading a small business with about 35 people, and how you learn that cash is king. Cash flow is king, how important people are, and how you manage an organization where what you're selling is people's expertise, and how you make sure that time's recorded, people are charged, invoices go out month after month so we can pay all of our salaries. So that was never something I planned. It's something that's a key part of my job now, and something that is a crucial part of consultancy, and particularly if you're a small consultancy, you're right at the coalface with it all, and it's very helpful actually to understand how all the systems work and how everything is put together and how important every aspect and every person is in the whole process. So that's also part of my day-to-day job. So I'll stop there and hand over back to you, Laura, and happily pick up questions.
Thank you. And Celine, perhaps if you could tell us more about your route into your current work, and again, what drew you to working in this particular field?
Yeah, so I did a undergrad in biological resources in Porto, in Portugal, which is the studies of alternative materials to our conventional ones, and studying mainly the chemistry associated to it. So I've always, in a way, wanted to work in a field that's connected to the environment. And then I decided to come to London in 2019, once I completed my undergrad, to undertake a master's in environmental engineering at Cranfield University. Arriving to a new city where I didn't know anybody was quite challenging and a very difficult transition for me. So it took me a bit of time to adapt to the new city, and obviously in the meantime I got a job in working in a restaurant in Soho, which is the heart of London, so that was quite a good experience. However, I always knew it was a temporary situation for me, because my goal was always to work in a field that was related to my studies and my interests. And it took me about 4 months to get a job, and that was when I got offered to work at Polymateria, which out of all the companies I applied to was the only one that called me in for an interview. So I was very fortunate that the first company to offer me a job was also the company that aligned perfectly well with my passion for nature, and that I would be working in a field with the sole goal to tackle one of the major environmental concerns, which is plastic pollution. So when I started off the company, I started as an analytical scientist, working in the lab and conducting all the analysis. However, I soon understood that I didn't enjoy much working in the lab. However, it was part of the job, so I did my part and worked my hardest until at the beginning of this year, I got promoted to my current role that I'm doing now. I've always been drawn to nature, given the way I grew up in both South Africa and Portugal, and I've always been close to nature because I never lived in a city. So when I was young, I used to love watching a lot of David Attenborough's documentaries, and that kind of drove me to wanting a career in environment. And since an early age, I've always been very actively involved in campaigns and volunteer work to tackle a number of environmental issues, such as, you know, beach cleanups, workshops on how to be more environmentally friendly, etc. Which is still something I'm involved in, and also being able to, you know, work for a company with the same interests is a personal bonus. The company, in a way, is also very actively involved in globally tackling plastic pollutions. We worked very close with the BSI to develop a standard which works as an umbrella standard that incorporates internationally accepted standards for companies that develop additives for conventional plastics, so that if one day they end up becoming fugitive plastics, which is a very common thing nowadays, and it ends up in the environment, because the main source of ocean pollution comes from land. So if they end up in land, they won't cause any environmental issues, such as being, you know, ecotoxicity, or in the end not biodegrading, leading to microplastics and nanoplastics. So we work with a number of companies, and we support them when they incorporate our technology in their products. And we also ensure that they conduct the correct tests, and that they market, you know, the additive and the technology in the correct way based on the evidence that they achieve. So yeah.
That's great. That's brilliant, Celine. Thank you. Leslie, back to you. What in particular do you enjoy about the work that you do?
Well, I think the thing that I particularly enjoy is that I'm learning new things all the time. So the work never gets stale, even though I've been doing this for way more than 30 years. Every problem that you're faced with is an individual challenge to work out what the issues are, what's happening or might happen, and why it's happening or might happen, and then to determine what needs to be done about it. And for example, that could be how to manage a particular activity, so minimizing the potential for impacts or effects, or it might be how to remediate a problem that's already occurred, a spill or a historical industrial legacy, for instance. So there's always something different, something unique about any particular situation that you're dealing with. And what I often try to do, and I do this quite regularly, it's very, very true. I try to bring people back to one of the basic principles of thermodynamics, which is that matter can neither be created nor destroyed. And nothing that exists in the materials that we use and then reuse, or that we treat or discard, can be made to disappear. It's got to go somewhere, and ultimately it's got to go back into the environment somewhere. So you can change the components from one compound to another, or you can move them from one environmental compartment to another, and that's where the chemistry bit comes in, but you can't wipe them out. And the true solution that you have to fight to find every time is making sure that the individual components that you're considering end up back in the environment at a place and in a concentration where they can be assimilated without perturbing or affecting anything else in a way that's going to harm them. And you've got to do all of that whilst you're minimizing the energy that you expand on the process, and balancing those basic principles with the practicalities and the messiness of real life, wrapped in layers of regulation, which often can work against rather than for those environmental principles, even though they might have had the best of intentions. It means that you're served with an endless array, really, of new and interesting problems, which to me is something that means I still enjoy going to work every day. Equally important to me, I think, all the way through my career and still, is that I love that I get to work most of the time with people with allied skills. So skills like geology, hydrogeology, geotechnical engineering, soil science, ecology planning, and I could go on, but also with lawyers and regulators and industrialists. And like David, I do quite a lot of expert witness work as well. And you see a whole different side to life in that type of work as well. And you get to learn so much from each and every one of them, and you could get to understand the skills and the areas in which they work. So it's those two parts to me that are particularly enjoyable about what I do.
That's great, thank you, Leslie. Celine, same question to you. What particularly do you enjoy about the work that you do?
Yeah, what I mostly enjoy, about the work is the science. I'm very much involved in the products development and the research of our technologies. And the company is still quite young, so we're still quite a small team. And the fact that being able to be in a space with multiple individuals from so many different backgrounds and coming together and kind of just doing all that brainstorming and finding a common solution is a very satisfying feeling. And I've been at the company for just over 2 years, and I still feel that even though it feels like I know everything, at the same time I don't, and every day I'm still learning something new. And then another thing is the company gives me a lot of freedom to be able to participate in conferences and trainings and all of that connected. So being able to assist and see what other companies and other research groups are doing, and tackling big environmental concerns is also a very enjoyable thing for my job, because I get to talk to these individuals, and it's kind of like this joint sharing of knowledge, which is also very enjoyable thing, and that I love to do for my role.
Great. And David, same question to you.
Remember to unmute this time. I'm quite pleased with myself. So yeah, I think
Winning already.
Yeah, my most enjoyable thing by far, I think, is working with students. I think I've done quite a few different things in my career, which has been quite nice, and also I guess an important thing to know, that you don't have to decide straight away into something. But yeah, working with students is by far the best thing for me. I realised I get much more joy out of helping other people succeed and seeing them develop and succeed than I do out of succeeding myself, which might seem a bit odd, but it's just such a joy to be able to help people, really.
That's great, thank you, David. And actually, we'll stick with you, David, for the next question. And what particular challenges do you face in your job, and perhaps more widely, what challenges exist within your field?
I guess for my job specifically, multitasking has to be like one of the biggest challenges. Yeah, just kind of flittering from meeting to meeting, different project to different project. I've probably got about 30 different research projects on the go at the moment with various students and collaborators and colleagues. And so I always used to think academics seemed a little bit scattered, because they'd come into a meeting and almost be saying, well, okay, what's this project about? What am I doing? Now I kind of feel myself doing that a little bit as well, as you're trying to keep on top of just all of the things that are going on. But that's what I like about it, the diversity as well. Like I never have a dull moment. I think challenges that exist within our field, within academia especially, I think one of the main challenges we have is on equality and diversity. Like the RSC have been doing a fantastic job of raising awareness on this. If you look at kind of some of the gender equality, diversity issues, especially in chemical sciences, and just some of the drop off that we have in people going to senior positions is staggering, and something we really need to be doing more about. Also for people in diverse backgrounds, and also for the LGBTQ plus community as well. Trying to make, I think, chemistry the most inclusive place, where it doesn't matter where you're from or what you think, but it's the science that's the most important. And I think we're making really positive steps, but I still don't think we need to take our foot off the pedal on that one. That's important.
Great, thank you, David. And Celine, perhaps if you could just highlight particular challenges that you face in your job, and also expand on perhaps any challenges that exist within your field.
Yeah, I mean, I think like all jobs, there's like a number of challenges that you face. I mean, it's just like life, there's always bumpy rides. But for me, I think my main one is kind of managing clients' expectations. The plastic industry is such a huge industry, and each product we see on the shelves of a supermarket will have a specific recipe or composition that is unique to that brand, whether it's the type of inks and packaging that they use. For example, when you talk about Coca-Cola, what you associate Coca-Cola is red and red packaging. So we have to conduct a number of tests and we have to achieve a certain number of results so that the product, you know, doesn't cause any problems when our additive is incorporating in it. And there's certain time frames and that are associated to that. And sometimes clients do not understand that. They think it's, you know, it's going to be done in 1 month and it's going to be okay, but that's not necessarily how it is. It's very tricky when you come down specifically the ecotoxicity testings, where, you know, there's so many criteria that you have to achieve. So that's, I think, the number one thing that sometimes is a bit hard, is just managing that. In the field of environmental studies, this is something, you know, maybe I felt when I was looking for jobs. I think nowadays it's much more hot topic. Like, a lot of companies are trying to go down the sustainable routes, and obviously there's more and more jobs appearing that are associated to that. But, you know, maybe 5 years ago that wasn't the case. And, you know, when you would want an environmental job, there would be 3 main routes you would go down: either waste management, water management, or energy. So that's kind of what I felt, you know, 2 years ago when I graduated and was looking for jobs, was kind of those 3 industries to go. But I feel that, you know, now there's more companies, you know, with the United Nations targets and even the UK trying to achieve their climate and environmental targets. I feel that that's driving more industries to take down more sustainable routes, and hopefully that will give more job opportunities in various fields for the new people that will be graduating in those areas, since a lot of people my age are very keen on going down that.
That's great, thank you, Celine. And Leslie, same question to you.
Yeah, because I work in consultancy, I think the overriding challenge for me is making sure that the advice that you provide, because that's our business, is providing advice, is practical and implementable. You've got to be able to communicate what can be quite complex information in a clear and concise way, and it's got to be tailored to what the client needs. No one wants to read an academic thesis in this context, so you've got to synthesize what's important. And in addition, because the consequences of the solutions or the actions that you're recommending can have quite severe and very long-term consequences, it's always a challenge to make sure that you check and double check all your facts and calculations. And in our company, we always check each other's work, because you can get far too close to your own outputs and your own opinions, and it's beneficial to get someone else who's a little bit stood back from it to take an overview. And I think another real daily challenge is understanding the complex legislation which governs waste management and environmental protection. It's not always based or implemented on science or logic, but you have to work within that framework. You have to understand it, you have to understand its context, and you have to make sure that any solutions that you're recommending fit within that framework, and you're able to explain that context to your clients. And I think those are the key aspects for me.
Great, that's brilliant. Celine, going back to you, perhaps could you highlight what particular skills you feel are important to undertake a role in your field, and what practical things you can suggest for our listeners to help them develop or build on those skills?
Yeah, I always find these questions a bit difficult because I'm still quite early on in my career, but I always try to kind of you know, give more of a personal point of view from what I did. I think, you know, in this type of field, volunteer work is very important. So, you know, if you get the chance, stuff like beach cleanups and any sort of workshops is so important for your own personal and professional development, and it does give you a very different view of how things, you know, current agendas in the world are happening, because I feel every day things are changing, and it's a very fast-paced world, and sometimes it's a bit hard to keep up with everything that's happening. And also, you know, any sort of basic box standard home reading and being able to assist in a lot of documentaries and all of that, I felt to be very advantageous when to do interviews, for example, because when I did my interview, you know, I didn't know anything about biodegradable plastics, but I did know a lot about plastic pollution, and I knew a lot of the impacts that was causing, you know, in especially developing countries and everything. So that level of curiosity and general knowledge is, I would say, a very important fact. I also know that, you know, you can't be an expert in everything, but being versatile is, you know, really plus. And also, I think it's really important to be a team player, and be able to work with multiple people from various backgrounds, and be able to know how to work with people, because I think that more and more, you know, it's very difficult for someone on their own to achieve things. It's usually a group or a team that go on and make revolutionary work. So being able to have that mindset of working in a team is really important. And I think finally, just, you know, as an individual, just being determined and hardworking, and, you know, being positive, because I think once a person sets their mind to something, you know, they can achieve anything. And you will always find challenges during your whole professional career, but just being able to have the mindset to overcome those, I think is a very important mindset to have.
No, that's great. And I think, you know, great to really highlight those transferable skills, you know, the things around teamwork, and actually, you know, anything that you're doing that's building on that, you know, is going to be really valuable. David, same question to you around what skills are important and any practical things you can suggest to help people build those skills.
Yeah, I guess I'll answer in a similar way, really. There's lots of skills, but I think one of the most important ones was I think is networking and ability to speak to other people. I think back to answering this from a personal perspective now. I remember when I'd just come out of university, and the thought of networking just scared the crap out of me, if I'm honest. Really did not like speaking to people, felt very anxious in public. The thought of giving presentations in front of people really made me panic quite a bit. So some of the practical things that I did, I'd just try and throw myself into it a little bit. So find out what local conferences and events were happening, sit quietly and listen to the talk, and then just set myself a little goal saying, okay, just speak to one person. It doesn't matter who it is or what about, just speak to one person. And I've tried to build it up from there. And then as I knew a bit more about these events, I tried to volunteer at them. And I found that really helpful, because then people have to speak to you. You can sit at the desk and just help give out name badges. And that's really nice, because you get to speak to everybody there. They see you. There's no pressure on you to start the communication. It's all on them because they have to speak to you. And that I found that so useful in my career, because people know me because I was efficient at giving them a name badge. They also assume I'm quite good at science. So I've been able to kind of do quite well out of that as well. And that really helped me.
That's brilliant. And Leslie, anything to add on those points?
Sure, excellent tips from David. I've made a note there. I think following on though from the challenges I mentioned, I think it goes without saying, in my type of role and anything similar, I think you need to be really into the detail. You've got to have high standards and expect them for others that you work with. Your communication skills, that's vital, both written and direct. And you've got to be in the habit of always checking and being checked and thinking about the practicalities of what you're proposing. But I would add to that it's really important in most circumstances to get out on site, to look at things, to make sure you understand what others are telling you, and how much you can rely on that. So always question what you're being told. For example, if you're analysing some data that's come to you from a lab or from field readings, any data, do you understand what was sampled, where, how, when, how was it transported, how was it analysed, what are the interferences, what do the answers that have been reported mean, and so on? Do they make sense? Are they telling you that they fit with everything else, or are they telling you something completely different? And do they fit with what you know and what you've seen? So be very questioning. Don't just accept information that you're given and that you're then going to use and rely on. And finally, I think I would always say, and it reflects what the others have said, is that you should always be ready and eager to listen to and learn from others, and to, for example, go and visit the places and processes that you haven't been to or seen, so you can understand what goes on and how things work or how they happen on the ground. and most people are delighted and they'll welcome you. They love to talk about what they do as well as the practical problems they face. So if you can get past that initial reticence, which, like David, I always struggled with in the early stages of my career, you'll actually find that people are very, very happy to talk about what they do. So take advantage of that, and you'll learn so much more about the practicalities of things.
Yeah, I totally agree. You know, fundamentally people do like talking about what they do and want to be supportive to others. So, you know, would very much echo those points that David and Leslie have made around, you know, talking to people and networking. And, you know, if that is something that you think actually something I struggle with or don't want, you know, don't enjoy, you know, if you go to our YouTube channel, if you go to YouTube and type in ChemCareers, we've got all our previous webinars saved in there, and there are some around networking, so do have a look at those, get some tips and advice around networking, because it really is a really important part of your career. So we're now going to move on to some questions from those who are listening. We've had a few come in, but you know, if you've got any, please do type those in now, and we will get through some of those. The first question is actually to you, Leslie, and it's, how do you find consultancy clients, or do they find you?
A bit of both, really. Much of what we do, we're lucky because it's usually different work for clients that we already work for, or they recommend us to other people. So you're only ever as good in consultancy as the last job that you did. So you can do 10, 20, 100 jobs really well, but if you do one badly, you can be certain in what is relatively sort of tight industry that people will be aware of that, which comes back to my point about staying on your toes all the time. So if you're good at what you do, you work well with people that are your clients, then they will come back to you to ask you to help them with other issues that they might have to be dealing with. We do go and look for new clients sometimes, but mostly that's by sort of sideways looking. So we don't do cold selling, we don't go phoning people up, we don't do all of that hard sell stuff, because frankly I hate it and I don't think I'd be any good at it. And most people don't welcome cold calls and salespeople in general terms. So it's about giving presentations, about getting involved on committees, about giving your time and your knowledge for the betterment of the industry or for your profession, being members of professional institutions and helping out with those, very similar to the sort of things that David mentioned. So people see you, they get to know you, they hopefully get to think that you know what you're talking about, and therefore if they've got a problem, then they're more likely to come to you. So those are the key ways we go about it.
That's great, thank you, Leslie. Perhaps, David, I can ask the next question to you. So someone here is asking, can someone who hasn't specialised in environmental chemistry get into environmental chemistry jobs? For example, they have a PhD in materials chemistry but haven't specialised in environmental chemistry.
I think so. I think sciences and chemistry especially is very transferable. So I guess depending on what you're going for, it's just kind of looking at that application and pulling out your strengths that match with this. So don't write the application pulling out your strengths from a materials chemistry perspective. Apply from it and saying how that knowledge can then transfer to solve these environmental chemistry problems. And yeah, I think when we look and hire people, it's not specifically on what the piece of paper says their degree is on. It's about those skills and the person really, and what they want to do. If you're super passionate for it, and you can fight a case of saying, okay, this is why I want to do it, then people will listen. And there's always a chance to swap and change different careers and jobs. I think I'm on like my third or fourth different kind of path within chemistry at the moment. So yeah, definitely I think you can change.
Absolutely. And I would sort of echo that point around, you know, really highlighting to a recruiter what relevant experience you do have, and highlighting the you know, that materials knowledge, and then really talking about the sort of passion and enthusiasm for the environmental side of it. You know, really recognizing that recruiters want to see that, and want to understand what it is about that role that excites you, what it is about that organization that excites you. And again, you know, I think we've all touched on this sort of that theme of those transferable skills being really important. Thanks for that, David. We've got one other question here, and actually I might answer that, around someone who is looking for some summer experience in the field, and kind of how to go about finding that experience. So I would suggest a few things, which is perhaps going away and identifying companies of interest, so doing some research around that. Chemistry World Jobs does also sometimes have summer placements on there, so have a look, but it might be worth contacting companies directly to see if they you know, have those opportunities available. Do have a look on kind of more environmental jobs websites. So there's environmentjob.co.uk, and there's also greenjobs.co.uk. They may not directly be advertising summer placements, but actually it might be a good way of identifying companies who have got you know, work in that field, and might be of interest. Celine, I don't know whether you want to add, you know, you talked about obviously moving over to the UK and trying to find a role. What was your strategy in being able to identify the job that you're doing now? You said you'd applied for a few things.
Yeah, I mean, completely the same as you, is just kind of being actively, you know, applying and reaching out to companies of interest. If you know there's a particular company that you just align yourself and you see yourself working for, I mean, reach out to their hiring and services. I think all companies have that, and kind of just, you know, explain why you think you'd be a good fit, because sometimes, you know, you might least expect it, but maybe that company's not hiring, but then, you know, they see this email, this amazing individual being so passionate, and they open up, you know, a space just for that person. Also selecting the right websites to apply. So I mainly used LinkedIn and Chemistry World for my applications. So those are two very good ones that I used when I was applying for jobs. And it's just, for me, it's just kind of, you know, it's not, if you start applying, it's not within a week that, you know, you're going to get 100 propositions. It's kind of also being able to have that patience and just continuing to apply and continuing to see where you see yourself working for, and sooner or later opportunities will come, and kind of not just you know, giving up on that. It is a difficult process and sometimes can be very unmotivating, but you know, once you get the job, once you get the interview, all of that is worth it. So that's kind of my opinion.
That's brilliant, thank you, Celine. So I'm just going to sort of draw everything to a close now. Firstly, I want to really say thank you to Leslie, David and Celine for sharing their career stories, and sharing their views and thoughts. And I think for me, what really came out was for all of you the variety of what you do, and that being something you particularly enjoy, and also that opportunity to work across a number of different sectors with a number of different people with different background, experience and knowledge, you know, kind of makes that you know, a really exciting sort of field and an area to work in. And I think, again, you've all highlighted that really important aspect around the transferable skills that you've built up, and actually being able to effectively demonstrate those to recruiters alongside the sort of passion and enthusiasm that you have for what you do. And I would imagine, particularly, with what you do, that passion must really sort of drive you to achieve what you want to achieve. So thank you very much for coming on and sharing those stories. Just to finish off, I do want to remind listeners that if you are a member of the Royal Society of Chemistry, you do have access to support from me and my colleagues, and we're there to support you at all stages of your career, and that could include online support. It could include one-to-one consultations. It still says in person, but at the moment we're not doing that, but still very much online and available for phone, Skype, Zoom, and we're there to help with those practical things, whether it's trying to find jobs, job searching, completing CVs, supporting you with preparing for interviews, or just more generally helping you kind of think about your career, whether that's you're very early on or very much established and kind of thinking about the next steps. We also have a mentoring scheme where you can be matched with a mentor to support you through that exploration. And absolutely, I think everybody's highlighted today that importance of networking. So do utilise RSC membership for that. Think about the interest groups that we have. There's over 70 interest groups. Join them, engage in what they're doing to really kind of get the best out of your membership. There's a lot of information on our web pages at rsc.org/careers, and also if you want to drop me an email, you can do so at careers@rsc.org. So like I say, I want to thank you all for listening, and again to say thank you to Leslie, David and Celine for their time this afternoon, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Laura. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.